And we'll get started. So choosing a primary school. Oh, she says. So what we're going to kind of cover in the next hour is just a kind of a brief overview of what the options are. I'm going to talk a little bit about the special educational needs policy. All schools will have one, should have one, and what is in there, what you might be particularly interested in looking at. And then I'm going to go through kind of areas for discussion, which may be when you go on visits or when you meet with any staff at a potential primary school, things that you might want to think about asking about. And some of that will be about general kind of facilities within the school and information that will be useful. And then we'll think a little bit more about that information that may be a bit more specific to your child and certainly to teaching a pupil with Down syndrome. Talk a little bit about who may be involved. And then I'm just going to finish the session with a little bit of an overview of the research. Okay, so quite a lot to get through in an hour. Okay, so thinking about what the options are, and I'll talk a little bit about the first two in a bit more detail, but generally in the UK we have mainstream settings, so kind of your local school where other children who don't necessarily have additional needs will be going to, and also there'll be some children in there with a range of different additional needs, so your mainstream settings, mainstream schools. And then the other option that we have in the UK, or the general option that we have is we have a specialist setting or special school. They're generally far fewer in your local area and they cater only for children with additional needs. And the children that they cater for will depend very much on the school. So you might have a school that has pupils with more complex needs, or you may have a school that's particularly for children with autism. So it's worth, when you're going out looking at special schools, but I'll talk a little bit more about them in a second, thinking about what the options are for you locally. So those are kind of the main two that people choose between. The other one that may come up is it may be that you have a local mainstream school that has a specialist provision within it. So they may have a class or a couple of classes where they provide a slightly different timetable and a slightly different provision to that of the regular classroom. And again, they can be very different. So some schools may have a specialist provision where children are in there all morning and then in the afternoon they're out in the mainstream classroom. Or it might be that they have a bit more of a bespoke individual looking at when each particular pupil comes into that base or is in the mainstream class based on the timetable and the individual's needs. So you may have that. If you have a specialist provision, a little bit like I was saying about that special school, specialist setting, different provisions often have different criteria for the children that they will provide for within that provision. Maybe that there is one specifically for children with learning difficulties. It may be that there is one particularly for children with speech and language difficulties. Maybe that there's one particularly for children with autism, for example. So again, it's worth looking and finding out, doing a bit of research about what's on offer in your local area. And the only other thing I've put on here, although I'm now thinking I haven't mentioned educating at home, but this is a session about choosing a school. So I guess focus on the school, is some people do a combination of the above. So it might be that the children are in a mainstream setting for part of the week and in a special school for part of the week. Now, that's all I'm going to really say about that option. Apart from, I have known a number of families who have chosen to do that, normally for a limited amount of time, often as part of a transition, and then they've made a decision for one or the other. So in my experience, that's not been a long-term option. And obviously, there are lots of things to be considered in terms of that option. I think it's important that the child knows what school they're at. They know where they're going as part of their schooling. They've got that opportunity to make friends and be with that group of children. And if you're starting to miss some of those opportunities, it becomes a little bit more confusing and a little bit trickier in my view. But that option is one that I know some people do go for. There is no two schools that are the same. There's no two mainstream schools, there's no two special schools. So every school is obviously different and can be very, very different. You may have a small school out in the countryside where you've got 100 pupils across the school and they mix classes across different year groups versus maybe a much bigger school where you've got 3-4 classes per year, all with 30 children in. They're obviously a much different environment. So really, it's just to say it's a good idea to visit a variety of settings that are local to you. What are the options for you? And starting to get a feel about what you think looks right for your child. Obviously, all children are different, just like all schools are different. And I can't say, oh, this one will work best for everyone. But I would say I've got some kind of quotes and tips from other parents at the end, so I'll share those with you. But really, you know your child, you know what they're like, what they find challenging, what really supports them, and going and seeing the school really is your best option for getting a bit of a feel about that setting and that choice for you. And it is your choice. At the end of the day, it is up to you where you choose to send your child to school. Now, I say that, and that is kind of the official line. There is obviously an issue of getting into the school. So if you were to choose a special school, for example, there will be a number of places, and based on the criteria for that school, it may be more of a challenge to get into there. If you choose a mainstream school, if it's in your local, if it's your catchment school, in your local area, that's your school where your house, the local school for your house where you're situated, then definitely you'll get in terms of also looking at other schools outside of your catchment. You also stand a much better chance of getting in with an EHCP, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So it is your choice, and that's why I say it's important to go and have a look. And I know over the years we've worked with loads of parents, and choosing a school is one of, I think, the most challenging things for lots of parents. For some parents, it's easy. My older son goes there, that's where we're going. Job done, I've made my decision. And that's an important thing as well to consider about the rest of your family. Where are you going to go at 9 o'clock or 8:45 on a Monday morning? You can't be in two places at once. If that's where you're doing drop off, it makes sense. If it's a good school for your other children, every chance it's going to be a great school for your child with Down syndrome as well. And again, so lots of things to consider when making your choice. And like I say, lots of parents lose a lot of sleep over it, have lots of questions about it. And that's why part of the reason we're running tonight's session. And one of the things I always say to them, I'm not sure if it makes them feel any better, is that once you've made your choice, if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you can always change your mind. So I know it's probably not going to help you sleep any better when you're making the decision, but knowing that once you finally go, okay, that's the one, if you go, actually, turns out this didn't work out as well as I thought it was going to, or you move in house, you can move to another school just like you would, well, in fact, easier than you could for another child. Okay, so, oops. Starting with mainstream schools, as I've said, every school is different, variety of sizes, number of pupils. I gave the example of that kind of very small country school versus much bigger type of school. I didn't say, many years ago, before I was a speech and language therapist, I used to work as a teaching assistant in a school where we had a pupil with Down syndrome. I worked with her in reception, year 1 and year 2. That was a school where we had 3 classes per year, so a fairly big school. She was a summer birthday. She started in September, pretty much full time. And we had a whale of a time, really. That's part of how I got here, really. So again, I can't say that one is better in terms of support for our children. We work with loads of schools, loads of different varieties in terms of size, settings, ethos, religious schools, all sorts. And my experience is generally very positive. Of course, We get staff where it's a bit more of a battle. And we have the odd setting where they might say, oh, I'm not sure I can meet this child's need. And I'll be saying, oh, interesting, because we've got another 50 schools in your local area who are. So what makes you think you can't? But anyway, variety of sizes and number of pupils. Usually, the usual format is you have a class for each school year. So you'll have one or more classes for reception, one or more classes for year one, one or two more classes for year two, and so on. Occasionally, depending on the size of the school and sometimes the cohort, if they've had a particularly big birth year one year, you may have a split class, might be a reception year one class or a year one, year two class. But again, generally speaking, you have your set classrooms. And the other thing just to be aware of is kind of the free flow. Now, that normally only happens in reception. Sometimes it might happen slightly older into infants, but generally in reception where you have more than one class that you can move between. Often there'll be two classes kind of linked together, sometimes with a door, sometimes just completely open plan. And again, it's something to bear in mind in terms of your child and your child's needs. In terms of reception, you generally, in mainstream schools, will have one class teacher at various points throughout the day and one class teaching assistants. There'll be two adults in that reception class for the general class. That would be if you didn't have any other children with additional needs within that class. There may well be some additional adults for all of the day or part of the day based on the individual children and additional needs that they have within that class. Now, our children with Down syndrome typically have approximately 25 to 30 hours of additional support, potentially a little bit more than that in the UK, and that would invariably mean they have an additional adult within the class for that amount of time. Again, you want to check your local authority, and some schools I know are changing that a little bit, but generally speaking, you do your EHCP, you'll have laid out the additional support that your child needs, and in order to meet that level of need, you normally end up with quite a high level of additional adult support required. Like I said, average being 25 plus hours a week. The other thing about mainstream schools is they typically have external services coming into school to support the school and the pupils within that school. So things like speech and language therapists, physiotherapists, OT, hearing, sensory impairment team won't usually be based within school. School will have access to those services in a number of different ways, be it through the NHS or through the local authority, and they will then come into school to see the children within that school. So it's the kind of thing to bear in mind when you're thinking about mainstream schools. In terms of special schools, again, every school is different, variety of sizes, number of pupils within there, not normally as big a numbers as we see in mainstream schools, but again, very different compared from one to the other. Generally, the place in special schools is based on the needs of the child not being able to be met in mainstream schools. So mainstream schools cannot meet the needs of the child and therefore offered a place in special school. Classes are typically set on age, but often can be set by ability. So you may have some of the more able children or some of the better talkers, more able in terms of language development in one class. You may have some children with more mobility issues in another class. Classes tend to be much smaller, where our mainstream classes may have about 30 children in the class. The class here may be about 8 to 10 children in terms of the size, and you tend to have a higher ratio of adults to children in the class. So you may have a class of 10 and you may well have 3 adults within that class. What we tend to see is much less one-to-one support for our children with Down syndrome in special school. So we're in mainstream school, tend to get quite a high level of additional adult support based on that individual child's needs. in special school specialist provision, you have less of that one-to-one support. So there's a higher ratio of adults, but less individual support. And the other thing to say is some of those external services that we talked about being based outside of mainstream schools are often based within the school. So the school will have one or more speech and language therapists who work there throughout the week. But it's a good thing to be asking schools about how frequent the children have access to some of those services. Are those services direct intervention sessions with the speech and language therapist, or is it the speech and language therapist supporting the class as a whole? So coming in, doing some observation, doing some training and strategies for the teachers and the adults in the class, rather than direct one-to-one therapy services. Because I know some parents think, oh, got a speech and language therapist in the school, I'm going to get great speech and language intervention. It's not always the case. So it's worth asking that question, whichever setting that you're visiting. I said about this special educational needs policy. Every school must have one, and it is usually available on the website for you to freely access. If you can't find it, definitely ask the school, because it is definitely available for parents to have a look at. And it's a useful tool, I think, to have a read through. It gives you a bit of a overview of the school, about kind of their views and their ethos around educational needs. Will probably include the objectives of the school, what their aims for all pupils, including our pupils with additional needs. It will talk about some of the key people, their roles and responsibilities, who you might come across when you go into school on your visit, who you're going to be looking out for is useful. It will give you information about admissions, talking about some of the criteria and some of the, what's the word I want to use, not policies, some of the pathways for admission. We'll talk about access to the school, any issues with access, how they overcome those issues. Talk about curriculum and assessment monitoring, specifically for children with additional needs. We'll have, or potentially have, some information in there around specific resources that they offer and that they have in school and that they use. We'll talk about how they work with parents, which is obviously really important for you to know. And also talk about links out of school, so who school work with in terms of those external agencies and how that works. As I was saying, some may be NHS, some may be local authority, etc. Now, I think it's important. I think it's a useful document. I think it's helpful to have a read through of the information. I think it also may give you some ideas around things you might want to find out a bit more about, and just to check meet the educational needs policy when you go in for that visit. You might ask about a particular role or responsibility, or their curriculum and assessment monitoring. Are they able to feed that back? Does it match what it says they do in their policy? So it's quite a good one to have a look at before you go on your visit, if you've got or a second visit, if you've got a potential school that you think this might be the one. When you're doing those visits, I've got down here some kind of things to think about asking and discussion to have with the people who are showing you around. Often you will be meeting either this, it'll be a member of the senior leadership team. So it'll either be the SENCO, or the deputy head, or the head teacher often. And I think that's important. You want to be meeting somebody in that senior management team, because they're obviously responsible for making sure that the whole school is following these kind of outline. So I'll be asking about the school ethos, clocking the attitude of staff and pupils, how they're interacting with other pupils within the classroom, other pupils you can see with additional needs, a bit of a chat with them, how they interact with your child, or if you're going on a visit with your child, how they interact with you, talking to parents of children with additional needs. Have a look at the site. Do you think the site is going to meet your child's needs? Has it got loads of stairs and your child's got an issue around mobility? How are they going to overcome that? How do they do it for other children? Thinking about the structure of the day, what time it starts, what time drop-off is, pick-up is, those kind of things, how it's going to fit with you, your lives, your other children. Obviously, you're going to ask for about provision for children with additional needs, special educational needs, and ask them some of those questions about the policy that we just had a kind of a quick whiz through. I would ask them about communication, how they communicate with parents, both in terms of, for all parents, what systems do they have in place? Do they use email, WhatsApp group? Do they have a parents WhatsApp group? And then specifically, what's the communication like for parents of children with additional needs? Is there additional communication systems in place for them? I'm sure there should be. I'm sure there will be. But you want to be asking about that. How do they involve parents in learning? At the moment, we're really just thinking about reception and getting into reception. But as your child moves through primary, obviously there's going to be more homework, more activities to be completing at home. It's a good one to be asking about in terms of gauging how they interact with parents, how they support parents, how they provide that learning support. I would ask about transition plan. What is their transition plan for all children moving up into school in reception? And again, any additional plans for children with additional needs? And how flexible are they about that? You might say, oh, my child really benefits from some additional photos of important people and important information, important vocabulary, important settings. So things like a photograph of where the toilets are, which door they should go in, which door they come to school in, where they hang their peg, where they put their book bag, who the adults in their class are going to be. A picture of the hall, so they know what the hall is when you say you're going to the hall. And are they open to, oh, yeah, no, we can do all of that. No worries. And then, of course, thinking about kind of the academics and the teaching, who's responsible for literacy or reading, for number, for any programs that they use in terms of supporting those kind of academics. Are there any subject specific teachers and any particular resources that maybe they use? When you go around, I'll just be looking at them thinking, do the staff and pupils seem happy? Are they happy at school? Are they engaged? Do you have children leaving the class? Or do you have a bit of a free fall going on? Are we going, oh, no, not for me. Or what sort of school are you looking for? Are you looking for one where children are maybe sat at the desks a little bit more? Again, not in reception, but when you do your visit, you want to be seeing different year groups because you are picking this school ideally certainly for infants, potentially for primary, depending on whether it's a separate infants and junior or all the way through primary. Is it really noisy? Because if you've got difficulties with hearing and verbal short-term memory, that's going to make things a bit challenging. I always think reception is the most challenging class. So got to get through there, and then I'll be looking at, okay, what does year one look like? How structured does it seem? Does the school look well cared for? Is it in need of a bit of TLC? Because are the displays up to date? Are they all a bit torn and a bit worn out? And does it look like somebody's looking after it? Those sorts of things can be telling. What's the structure of the school day? So both in terms of reception and all those other years. And sometimes they'll be exactly the same. Other times the time may well change slightly. How many children are in the class? How many adults are in each class? And what's the outside space like? Is it safe? I know I always think when I think of that sort of point, I had one lad, he's quite grown up now, but I remember him starting school and the classrooms, there were 3 classrooms per year, separate classrooms, but they all led out to a balcony area where they had their outside space and a kind of 1 metre high fence before it dropped over down to some kind of much lower, and everybody was in a panic because he was a climber, and we did a lot of, well, is this the right place, will he be safe, how's he going to get on the outside space, he's going to be up over that fence, and never climbed it once in the whole of reception, never tried to climb it despite all of the panic and all of the risk assessment. So I think equally it's important to look out for those things, it's important to be aware of them, and of course you know your child really well, but it wouldn't but think about how you're going to overcome them, wouldn't necessarily rule that out, may never happen. as in that sort of situation. What does lunchtime look like, and what does break time look like? Are they mixed in terms of age groups with older groups? Is it a bit of a free-for-all? Is it a really busy playground? How's your pupil going to manage with that? What sort of when I say about the busy, as I said, I worked in a fairly big infant school, and we work with a number of very large primary schools where there's a number of classes in each age group, and that's not me saying they're not a really good fit. We often have more children with additional needs within bigger schools, bigger peer groups to choose from. So please don't think I'm saying you want to be looking for a small school, because that's not what I'm saying at all. Just thinking about your child and what's going to work for them. Is there any equipment available at break time and lunchtime? Pupils with Down syndrome often really benefit from the use of some of that equipment. So activities that don't involve as much talking and chatting. And are the school open to taking out an extra football or some hoops or the wet play box at break time? Because that's going to be useful for your child. Do they have before or after school clubs or lunchtime clubs? How do children with additional needs access those clubs? Do they have any specialist subject teachers? So coming to teach particular subjects, often that might be around PE or around music or foreign language. You might have an external person come in, and how do they work with those? How do they make sure that they get training on things like Down syndrome? Do they access their inset days, etc.? What does the beginning of reception look like for all children to help them settle in? What are their extra visits? How do they structure their visits? Are they starting full-time almost straight away, or do they have a bit more of a staggered start? And again, I know loads of children who start full-time in September and manage absolutely fine, and other children who need a bit more of a settling in period. Again, knowing your child. And do the children have homework? Lots of schools will do. It might be involve, to start with, just some reading, may well be some reading, writing, reading, spelling, maths homework, and then as they move through, some project work. And again, how does that work for children with additional needs? Then I've just put on there some kind of questions around literacy and numeracy. How do they teach reading? Do they do phonics only? Do they do phonics and sight words? What phonics scheme do they use? Again, you may have other children in the school, you may well be familiar with that scheme. Does that phonics scheme have any adaptations for children with additional needs? So things like Little Wandle, there is a Little Wandle version that is for children with additional needs. Do school have access to that system? Do they buy that in? What reading scheme books do they have? Looking for books that are repetitive and also have sight words in them. What's their approach to learning to write? Do they have fine motor activities? Do they have, often schools will do some busy hands groups where there are little groups that you go out to do, particularly for children who are having some difficulties with motor, to work on those fine motor skills. How do children with additional needs access those groups? Can we access those groups? Different equipment that they might have. Do they use cursive writing or print writing? So that's kind of joined up writing, or that stick and ball writing. Asking how they teach number, any kind of number schemes or resources that they use, and any particular resources across literacy and numeracy. So there's loads of questions there already. Do a whole 4-hour visit just in terms of thinking. But what I would say is, after the session, maybe have a thinking about going through the list. You will get a copy of the handouts part of it will be emailed when it's available to you over the next couple of days. Maybe have a think about going through and ticking off some of the things that are important to you, are particularly relevant for your child, and coming up with a few questions that you kind of go-to questions. Then you can compare across schools when you do your visits. In terms of specific areas for discussion, maybe on your kind of follow-up visit, and maybe have a meeting. Things like how do they access internal or external professionals? So how do they access speech and language therapy is often a big one, maybe physiotherapy, maybe OT, and who delivers those programs in school. So some schools will have a designated teaching assistant or teaching assistants within school who are responsible for delivering speech and language intervention. Will they be responsible for delivering it to your child? Will it be that additional adult who's in class who we talked about? How might that work? What training do they have? So do they have any existing knowledge and training around children with Down syndrome? And what's their response like in terms of asking them about accessing additional training and their kind of willingness around wanting to learn? And again, this isn't me saying you've got to look for a school where they've already got experience for people with Down syndrome. There can be pros and cons of that. I've had schools where they go, oh, we've done this before. And I think, oh, you have for one pupil who's very different to this one. And did you do it very well or not? And the schools where they've gone, we've never done this before. We've never had a child with Down syndrome before, but we're really eager to get it right. Where can we go for support? And obviously I'm going to be looking for that one who's really willing. Ask about how they use additional support. So if when your child has an additional adult or additional hours of adult support, what is that going to look like? And I've got a few more comments about that a little bit later on. How do they record and monitor progress? Again, you'll be interested for all children, but we're really now thinking about for children with additional needs. What formal assessments do they use? What informal assessments do they use? The kind of expectations, because we want our children to be making obviously progress on range of targets across academics, literacy, numeracy, and also socially, friendships, etc., independence. How do they target that, and how do they monitor progress across that? Because we want to be showing the child's progress. And if there's anything particularly specific to your child, so if your child has more mobility issues, if your child is a big signer, uses Makaton, have they got Makaton? Have they got staff who use Makaton, trained in Makaton already? What's their response in terms of needing to get some Makaton training? If your child has additional issues around toileting, having some conversations around that. How does the school provide support for children with SEN? What does it look like on a day-to-day basis? And what would it look like specifically for your child on a Monday morning? When I start school, what is that going to be like? Can you break it down for me? What do their expectations seem like for your child? Are they talking about all that your child is going to achieve? That's really what I'd be after. Do the school staff have experience, specific knowledge, training about Down syndrome? I'm going to talk a little bit more about our offer for schools at the end of today's session, and that willingness to go on training and get support from outside agencies. There is external support available. Are they keen to find out more about that? I've talked about Makaton. And if they have any in-house specialists like speech and language therapists, and again, if you're looking at specialist school, that may well be one of your questions. Who's available in school? How many people? How many of the pupils are accessing speech and language therapy? So you get a bit of an idea over how many people these two speech and language therapists have got. What's their caseload like? How many children they are seeing? How does that work in terms of direct and indirect therapy or intervention? I'll ask about how many children with an EHCP do they have. Gives you some information around, one, how experienced they are in supporting children with additional needs, and two, also probably give you a bit of information about their reputation for children with additional needs. How do EHCP reviews and target setting work? Asking them about how often they review them, what annual review meetings look like, what form they take, how they go about target setting, long-term targets, short-term targets, how they would record and monitor the progress of your child, so any bespoke interventions that they might be using, how they manage behaviour for all children, and again, have they got any examples of where they've adapted that their school behaviour system for children with additional needs? Are they willing to manage any particular health needs that your child may have? If your child has particular eating difficulties or difficulty with choking, or got them there around toileting? Do they have an area to change if needed? Is it a discreet area? Are they willing to be involved in that kind of personal care? And how accessible that area is? Is it all the way down the other end of the school, nowhere near reception, back down by the office? That's going to have a big impact on my time in and out of class. And how would they support independence and progress of social skills? That would be my biggest one. I think I'm interested in all the academics, of course I am, but what I really want to make clear to the school is I really want my child to be as independent as possible, and I want them to be on board with that as well. I've got to get a move on. Additional support. I said I would mention about how they use additional adult support in the classroom. So there's a list there of all the different things that additional adult might be doing. So they might be doing some preparation and planning, might be meeting with the teacher, going through what's happening next week, and then responsible for getting some resources ready. May well be doing some observation of the child, how they're managing a particular situation, what strategies they're using, what's working well, what targets they need to put in place. They need to be facilitating independence, so making sure that right from reception, the child is, I'm going to say, working on their own, and that work might be in the home corner, but certainly they're not going to be there all of the time. How they develop social friendships. Are they in charge of running a club at break time, or putting in some activities within the school day in terms of supporting friendships? How they support whole class activities, working with a range of children, and also small group work before we think about one-to-one working with the pupil. And often when people think extra hours of adult support, they think about that one-to-one, but actually there's a whole list of things that additional adult support may well, and I would argue probably should be, involved in spending their time on. Who might be involved with your child in terms of in school? The head and deputy head, and if you can meet that senior person, I think that's really telling. But obviously head teachers change all the time, and you want to make sure that the whole school, you've got that feeling of inclusion and wanting your child, really. Senko or INCO or inclusion manager may well be or should be involved with your child. Class teacher, of course. Then you may have teaching assistants who are particularly involved with working with children with additional needs, or more general classroom assistants. And then, of course, if you've got that kind of big team, how do they work together? Be asking, how regularly do you meet? Or how do you monitor that when you're thinking about those target setting? How do you share those targets? Who works on those targets? How does that work between the team? Then in external professionals, I've mentioned several of these already. Oh, EdPsych I haven't mentioned. We don't see anywhere near as many EdPsychs as we used to. Often if there's a transitional phase like starting reception or moving key stage, we may see educational psychologists, but often I don't see them coming into school regularly to work with the children. Very often can't think of a single case actually. Speech and language therapist, physio, occupational therapist, advisor for hearing impaired, visually impaired, or the sensory impairment team may cover that. Outreach, so you may have specialist outreach support. It may be for children with a range of additional needs, or it may be specific for children with Down syndrome, again, depending on your area. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we offer at the end. And then any other, really, depending on the kind of individual needs of your child. Communication, I've already said, is key. So I'll be asking about how regularly does the school meet with parents of children who have an EHCP. Really, I want half-termly review of targets, target setting, what we're going to be working on over the coming half term. How do they communicate an immediate concern or question? So I've got something that's come up before my half-termly meeting. How am I going to communicate that with school? Often schools have a communication book, email, or an online system like Tapestry is much more common now than it used to be. And having a realistic response time. Okay, I've sent you an email. What's my expectation in terms of when you'll respond? It may well not be that day, but it's certainly, I would be saying, if it's a thing that is a immediate concern or question, it should be kind of within the next 2 working days. And you really want to be fostering good working relationships. I think that's really important when you're thinking longer term working with the school. We want to be working together, really. You are going to probably have had more training and know more about Down syndrome, and you'll certainly know way more about your child than the school do when they start. And we need to be okay about that, but also thinking, okay, but how can I help the school? How can I facilitate their access to training, letting them know what's going on? Often it's a tricky time, because in those early years, you're the person who the speech and language therapist comes to see, or you go to the early development groups and you get the targets and you work with your child and you're doing all the kind of teaching as well as the parenting. And now you've got to hand that over. And that can be challenging for parents. And also, in order for schools to be doing it well, can really help in terms of having that open and positive communication. And I've just put on there, remember to communicate the positives. There will be things, wherever you choose, that some days don't go quite as you'd like. And we all are very good at going, oh, hang on, can I just say that this isn't working, or need to do this better, or have you thought about this? Just remembering every so often to go, that worked really well, and I just want to share that with the school, how brilliant this work is, or how pleased I am that they've achieved this target, or how well sports day went today, for example. Okay, so that's loads of things for you to be thinking about when you go on your school visits. As I said, not all of those things are going to be relevant for you and for your child, so I would think about highlighting some of the key ones, some of the key things to ask and to compare between schools when you go on the visits. I said I would just finish with a bit of a overview of the research, because I think it is absolutely your choice, but it is my job to inform you. There was a survey carried out in 2021 across the UK, looking at parents' experience of education in schools in the UK, both in mainstream and in special schools. What we found is the majority of pupils with Down syndrome attend mainstream primary school in the UK. Those pupils who are in specialist primary school were rated as having significantly greater difficulties. So that might be greater difficulties in motor skills, might be additional needs, dual diagnosis, may well be motor difficulties, health issues. Those were the children in special school. And pupils in mainstream school were reported to be receiving that high level of TA support. That's where I get those numbers from. We also carried out a survey of educators, and we saw a lack of clarity around the roles and responsibilities of the teacher and the teaching assistant, and sometimes that teaching assistant taking on the role of the teacher. And so when you're going and doing your visits and you're looking out for those children with additional needs, and you're asking questions about how that works in the classroom, what that looks like, really looking for the teacher to be that main point of contact and to be responsible for the teaching, just like they are for everybody else in the school, in their class. And educators on the whole reported that they wanted more targeted professional training for educators. Teachers and teaching assistants and SENCOs all reported wanting more training around supporting pupils with Down syndrome. This was all survey of educators who were working with a pupil with Down syndrome. So really positive feedback from staff about wanting that information and how they might access that information. Other research from in the UK, there was a study which kind of finished in 2006, which looked at comparing pupils in mainstream school and pupils in special school. Now, we can't redo this study, and you'll see it's a little bit old there, but this was a time when inclusion was just getting going, and we had a group of pupils who were in mainstream school and a group of pupils who were in special school, who were no different in terms of their profile and ability. They were a matched group, whereas now, as I said, we have majority of pupils in mainstream primary school, and those in special school have more significant difficulties, so we can't compare groups as they did then. What they found was pupils included in mainstream school show gains of more than 2 years in terms of spoken language and 3 years in literacy. We also saw significant gains in maths, general knowledge and social independence, and less significant behaviour difficulties in mainstream versus special provision. Saw that in our study as well. And effective teaching time being reduced in special schools. There's more time spent on transporting pupils around the building in terms of physical care and physical needs, in terms of therapies, and slower moving pupils around the building. So less time kind of spent on that academics. Other research, so research outside of the UK, where we still have these more comparative groups, we see very much a similar pattern. So children in mainstream schools performing significantly higher in reading, maths and writing than in special schools, and children in special schools spending between 1.5 and 2 times less time on academics. And they actually found that children with lower cognitive scores in mainstream schools outperform children with higher cognitive scores in special schools. So actually the less able children in mainstream school did better than the more able children in special school over their longitudinal study. And similarly, pupils more likely to be included in subjects like PE, music, lunch, break times than for academic subjects. And that often will happen when we look at those settings where you have a mainstream class and then within the mainstream school you have a specialist provision that you go in and out of. Often you're included for those sorts of subjects, but not so much for the academic subjects. So what does that all mean for us, really? I would say you want to look for a setting where the focus is on literacy and numeracy throughout the day. I want to be learning those skills, and I want to be looking for a class, whichever setting, where that is a focus. I want to be with able peers, so I want to be surrounded by the talkers and those ones who can model the speech, language, behaviour, play, the things that I know my child is going to look at, going to watch and going to copy. It's really important that we ensure we have friends with a range of needs, so we know other children with additional needs as well. And I said about looking for positive models of behaviour. And again, just to stress, it is your decision. But just as I said, I had some top tips from parents. These were parents who had started school, their child had started school in September, so they'd been there throughout reception. Does it fit with you? And this is what they would say to you. Does it fit with you and the family? We knew we were going to mainstream, so considered all the local schools that would be within walking distance. Fit with work and mean friends were close by. That's kind of the practicalities of how you're going to manage. Talk to the staff, speak to the head teacher, Senko, class teachers, assistants, even the receptionist. How do they make you feel? Ask around, does anyone in your local DS group have experience of schools in your local area? We chose the school primarily due to our eldest being present, but we were encouraged by Portage to look at other schools, including specialist schools. This was good advice as it reaffirmed our choice and highlighted what level of support we should expect from mainstream when compared to support she would have got at specialist school. Have they had much experience with children with EHCPs? Are they willing to attend the necessary training and learn? Are they open to you teaching them things? Ask about language and words used in the classroom and start practicing things like lining up, sitting on the carpet, putting a picture in your tray, etc. Work on independent skills. Anything they can do on their own will be looked upon well. Toileting, eating, putting on shoes or coat, etc. Definitely a transition book. This has been invaluable. Pictures of the school, classroom, teachers, hall, even the toilets. Also her uniform and her peg and tray. Visit the school even if you just stand outside and peer in the gate, talking about the people that are in there and what they are doing. I know that was. Go with if your child uses Makaton or another communication or learning method, do they know or are they willing to train in and adopt it? And go with your gut. I cannot stress this enough. As a parent of a child with additional needs, more than ever before, you are in tune with your gut instinct. What is right for your child, listen to that. So they said it really, go with your gut feeling, not always experience, but really that willingness and that flexibility, willingness to be flexible. Prepared to understand, find out about Down syndrome and your child as an individual. Have good communication with settings and parents. Be realistic, you know, it's new for everyone and there are going to be some things that don't go exactly as we would like, but it's all about how we're going to make the most of that. And your child's needs will change throughout education and be ready to work with the school. Okay, right, I'm going to go for questions in just a second, but I just said I would tell you a little bit about our primary education programme for schools. So we do a number of training sessions like these, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with this page if you found us here. This is the kind of, we launched this in October. This is our offer for schools. So schools can sign up to our early education programme. They sign up for a year, and for the whole year it costs £100, and they can sign up all the staff within their school if they like. They get access then to training. That's a core training for the team working in the class. There's also a training session for all staff, just short about expectations and inclusion. There's a whole host of information covering a range of education and health needs. There's information sheets and about teaching so across literacy, teaching sight words, teaching phonics, reading comprehension, writing, maths, value, counting, more and less, everything, loads of stuff on there. And alongside that information is a load of resources that they can download and tools to support learning across the curriculum. The other big thing about it is there is ongoing support. So if school have a question, they can contact us, come to a drop-in session and ask anything that they want, get help with anything they want, whether it's planning for next half term, what the topic is, how we might differentiate it, whether it's sports day or a residential trip that they're thinking about and they want to talk to others, get some experience, some knowledge, ask some questions, whether it's about managing behaviour, whatever it is. So I wanted to let you know that, so when you're asking to school, speaking to schools, you can tell them that's available and see what their response is. That might be a good gauge to how open they are about accessing training and information specific to children with Down syndrome.